Rāma Hare 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 Kṛṣṇa 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 Hare 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 Kṛṣṇa 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 Hare 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 Rāma 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 Hare 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 Kṛṣṇa 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 Hare 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 Rāma 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 Hare 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 Kṛṣṇa 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 Hare 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 Rāma 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 Hare 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 Kṛṣṇa 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 Hare 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 Rāma 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 Hare Hare Jayo Krishna Balaram, Jayo Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Jayo Vrindavan Dham. Jayo Radhe Shyam, Radhe Shyam, Lalita Vishaka, Jayo Radhe Shyam. Jayo Gauranitai, 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 Jayo Gauranitai. Jayo Jayo Prabhupada, 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 Jayo Jayo Prabhupada. Jam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivarajkacharya Ashtotara Sat Sri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivarajkacharya Ashtotara Sat Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jam Vishnupada Srila Gaura Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jam Vishnupada Srila Sachidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Jam Vishnupada Vaishnava Sarabhama Srila Jagannath Das Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Das Raghunatha Sad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopika Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Mayapur Dham ki jai. Shri Gangamai Yamunamai ki jai. Bhakti Devi Tulsi Devi ki jai. Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. ISKCON Vartamana Guru Vrinda ki jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaura Premanande. Hari Hari Bo. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome everyone. Today we are studying from Bhagavad Gita as it is. Chapter title Attaining the Supreme, Chapter 8 and Text 6. Yam yam vāpi smaran bhāvam tyajati ante kalevaram tam evaiti kaunteya sadā tad-bhāva-bhāvitaḥ. Yam yam vāpi smaran bhāvam tyajati ante kalevaram tam evaiti kaunteya sadā tad-bhāva-bhāvitaḥ. Yam yam vāpi smaran bhāvam tyajante ante kalevaram tam evaiti kaunteya sadā tad-bhāva-bhāvitaḥ. Yam yam vāpi smaran bhāvam word to word meaning. Yam yam, whatever. Vāpi, at all. Smaran, remembering. Bhāvam, nature. Tyajati, gives up. Ante, at the end. Kalevaram, this body. Tam, similar. Eva, certainly. Yeti, gets. Kaunteya, O son of Kuntī. Sadā, always. Tat, that. Bhava, state of being. Bhavitaḥ, remembering. Translation, purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Purport. Translation. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kuntī, that state he will attain without fail. Purport. The process of changing one's nature at the critical moment of death is here explained. A person who at the end of his life quits his body thinking of Krishna attains the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord, but it is not true that a person who thinks of something other than Krishna attains the same transcendental state. This is a point we should note very carefully. How can one die in the proper state of mind? Mahārāja Bharata, although a great personality, thought of a deer at the end of his life, and so in his next life, he was transferred into the body of a deer. Although as a deer he remembered his past activities, he had to accept that animal body. Of course, one's thoughts during the course of one's life accumulate to influence one's thoughts at the moment of death. So this life creates one's next life. If in one's present life one lives in the mode of goodness and always thinks of Krishna, it is possible for one to remember Krishna at the end of one's life. That will help one be transferred to the transcendental nature of Krishna. If one is transcendentally absorbed in Krishna's service, then his next body will be transcendental, spiritual, not material. Therefore, the chanting of Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare is the best process for successfully changing one's state of being at the end of one's life. Om Ajnanatimrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare 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 Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyasya Kripasindubhya eva ca Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Before we go into the discussion of this shloka, I beg for blessings so that I can speak something that helps you in your Krishna consciousness and also for my own purification. So, this chapter is entitled as Attaining the Supreme. So, this chapter has 28 verses. And the current section we are dealing is from the shloka 5 to the 9. And this section is all about dealing with remembering Krishna. How do we remember Krishna and why we have to remember Krishna? And what happens when someone remembers Krishna? So, this is actually an answer to Arjuna's question. Arjuna is asking that how can one who has attained devotional service, how can they remember you at the time of death? So, 8.6, the current verse, is dealing a general law of destination at the time of death. Where would the living entity go after crossing the juncture of the death? After meeting death, where will they will go? So if you're planning a trip, so we are destination conscious, right? We don't just make a plan, we don't make a trip or make a plan of a trip without any destination. If you are making a plan for a trip, then we know that this is the destination I want to go. So similarly, Krishna is saying, if you want to come to me, then you have to plan your life in such a way that you will be able to remember me. But if you're not planning, then based on your psychological thoughts, wherever you are, wherever is your mind, that's where you will end up with. So here, this verse is talking about we taking the responsibility into our hands, whether we want to be choosing to go towards Krishna or whether we don't want to choose to choose not to go to Krishna. And also the chapter entitled as Attaining the Supreme. To attain the Supreme, there is a very easy process. Whereas many karmis, yogis and jnanis, they do not know about this process. Now what is Krishna asking here? You just remember me. By remembering me, you will come to me. So, but for before remembrance, what has to be done? One has to think about him. And before even thinking, one has to engage in the activities that will lead us to think about Krishna and that will lead us to remember about Krishna. So in today's discussion, we will be looking at different aspects, which I thought about would be nice to share. Now we see how we are educated in the modern society. The modern education is not emphasized about life after death. It's only about one body, one opportunity. It is called OLO. OLO means one body, one opportunity. That means you enjoy now. Whatever you have, you enjoy now. Make the most out of it. So people are not trained, people are not educated, and people are not aware even that there is something beyond death, and which is necessary to look into. So, and because they have no education, because they don't have enough training, people are not inclined even to look into these aspects of life. So there is always a challenge that comes to us when we go out to tell people that there is life after death. Because there is a shadow of doubt. Does it really exist? Or doesn't it exist? And if it does exist, how do you prove? Right? So many a times, even the scientists, they were trying to prove that there is reincarnation through the scientific experiments. But still, not everyone is convinced that there is life after death. But what is Bhagavad Gita doing? Krishna conscious approach is different. Bhagavad Gita's approach is different. Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is not telling you to believe, but he is giving you all the opportunities to see that how you can suspend your doubts and how there is a possibility of life that exists beyond death. If we go to the previous chapters, in the very beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, how does Krishna open? When Arjuna surrenders and says, I am totally lost, you are my spiritual master, please guide me. So Krishna says, you say you're a learned man, you talk like a learned man, but you don't display those qualities of a learned man. And then he opens, Natvevaham jaturnasam, natva neme janadipa, nachaivam na bhavishyama, sarve vayam ataparam. So Krishna is opening up the entire dialogue for the Bhagavad Gita with this verse saying that never was the time I did not exist, nor you, nor all of these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So he's already establishing the truth that we exist eternally. We exist individually. And eternally we are existing. And then, what is the next following verse? Dehinosmi yata dehe kaumaram yavvanam jara tata dehantara praptis dhiras tatra namuhyati. Now Krishna is talking about how the embedded soul, and Prabhupada is so devotionally intelligent, he coined this term, Dehinosmi, that means embodied soul. The soul which is embodied in the body. What is happening to it? It's continuously passing through the boyhood, to the youth, to the old age, and the soul similarly passes into another body at the time of death. And someone who is sober person, who is sober, how can one become sober? By the help of the knowledge. Only when we have knowledge, we become sober. And that sober person, he will not be bewildered by such a change. And then there is always a change of bodies occurring. So when Krishna is giving this example, he's saying you can see for yourself how you have moved from your boyhood to the youth and then to the old age. And similarly, take my words for granted, that at the time of that you will move into another body. So don't get bewildered. So this was also in the context that, when Arjuna was feeling bad that I have to kill Dronacharya, I have to kill Bhishma Pitama, and I have to kill all my relatives and many, many soldiers. But it was just, he was using Arjuna as an example for us to learn that this process is happening, this transmigration is happening. So we can see this transmigration in different ways how we can calculate. One is, if you see the transmigration, how is it moving from childhood to the youth, to the old age and death. Another way to calculate is, there's 6 kinds of changes that are happening in our body. There is, we take birth and we remain for some time, then we grow, then we produce some effects, then gradually it dwindles and it vanishes. That's one way. And also Bhagavatam says there are 9 stages of the body. What are the 9 stages? Impregnation, gestation, births, infancy, childhood, youth, middle age, old age, and death. So why there are different ways to see this, there is changes? Because to alert us, saying that you have to constantly observe that the body is changing, but the person who is in there is not changing. And Prabhupada gives an example how that he went through his boyhood, and the clothes what Prabhupada wore when he was boy was different to when he wore in his adulthood. And when he took sannyas, he wore different clothes. But the owner of the clothes hasn't changed. So Prabhupada also gives a very nice definition about death. Death means it is forgetfulness of our previous life. We don't remember anything. So it is a juncture where the living entity is moving towards another destination. So here in 8.6, Krishna is saying, now introspect for yourself. Your destination will be dependent on what you will be thinking, what you will be remembering at the time of death. Then now you introspect what you want to be. So he's giving a choice. It's a very liberal choice. He's saying that you can choose me or you can choose anything else. And this is our real problem. The real problem is we don't appreciate that we are going through the suffering of birth, death, old age, and disease. We are only concerned, oh, it's very hot, it's very cold, we are rich, we are poor, we are beautiful, we are not beautiful, or we are educated, we are not educated, we have a good family, we don't have a family. So we are caught up into so many temporary problems. But the Shastra is cutting us through and it's telling us these are not your real problems. The real problems are birth, death, old age, and disease. And Krishna says only intelligent people can think about it, their problem, as well as they can figure out the solution. So if you want to attain me, Krishna is saying, then you have to think about me. And what happens if you think about me? You come back to me, and automatically all the other problems, all the temporary problems are taken care. You no need to worry about it. So Prabhupada also gives an example of the Bharat Maharaj. This is a pastime from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5. So Bharat Maharaj, he was the emperor of the entire universe. And he left the entire kingdom, his family, his possessions, his children, his followers, his name, fame, prestige, everything. Because he was in such a stage of his devotional service, he understood that for me, going back to Krishna is the most important thing. Then he goes to reside in the forest at the Gandaki river. And then he used to take bath every day morning. And he used to engage in the worship. And he used to chant mantras. And he used to observe all the ritualistic process. But once it happened so, because he has to be teaching us, so by his example, so there was a dove that was chased by a tiger. And the dove was pregnant. And with the roar of the tiger, the dove gave birth. But it thought that it got miscarriage. And then as it was crossing the river, the dove crossed the river and it thought it got miscarriage and it died. But the baby was born and it was floating back in the river. So Bharat Maharaj, out of compassion, it's a natural compassion, the devotee has compassion for all the living entities. So out of compassion, he took the baby deer and he started fondling, taking care of the deer. To so much to that extent that he forgot his main purpose to come to the forest itself. He left everything back at home, the emperor, the empire, the followers, the prestige, the fame, name, money, children, all kinds of attachments. But because of this attachment to the deer, he started to, how do you say, sorry, I'm not getting the word. He was distracted. He was distracted by his attachment to the deer. And to that extent, once the deer went missing. And he was so mad and he was blaming himself that the deer was missing because of him. He was not able to take care of the deer. And in the thoughts of that lamentation about the deer continued so to that extent that at the time of death he was just thinking about the deer and he left the body and he attained the body of the deer. But because Bharat Maharaj was such an exalted devotee, he has performed such staunch devotional service, Krishna wanted to just give him a punishment of putting him into a body of an animal. But still Krishna gave him the remembrance. Now this time Bharat Maharaj, who is in the baby deer, he became alert. And he was constantly thinking about Krishna. And then the next lifetime he came back as Jad Bharat. Now, some of the insights that we can take from Bharat Maharaj pastime is that if we want to increase our faith in Supreme Lord, then we should decrease our attraction to many other things. And because if we are attracted to every other thing and the Supreme Lord, they both go ill together. So it has to be simultaneously, one has to be increasing and one has to be decreasing. 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, it explains that, if you give a hungry person a good meal, what happens? First his hunger is subsided, he's satisfied, and he becomes joyful. So similarly, if someone takes up to the bhakti, his material detachment, he becomes materially detached. He becomes very attached to the Krishna. And he's also advanced in his devotional service. So, because Bharat Maharaj was intensely attracted and absorbed in the thoughts of the deer, he forgot to concentrate on the worshipping upon the Lord. So, Prabhupada says that, even though someone is engaged in devotional service, but if you're not putting your heart, complete heart, if you're not consciously absorbed into it, we will have the similar kind of back out in the devotional service. So, Prabhupada says that even though he was engaged in worshipping the deity, his mind was restless due to his inordinate affection. While trying to meditate, he would simply think of the deer, wondering where it had gone. That means one's mind is already distracted. And if the mind is distracted from the worship, whatever he's doing, it became the merry show of the worship. And then it will have no benefits. So Bharat Maharaj also, although the deer went away, Bharat Maharaj was, from time to time, he was getting up in the intervals. And then it didn't happen in one instance. It happened over a period of time. This is another thing that we have to learn from the Bharat Maharaj pastime. It's not that the deer gone and then Bharat Maharaj fallen down. No. The deer left and then he was engaging in his devotional service, but slowly, 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 he moved away from the devotional service. Because what was happening to Bharat Maharaj, from time to time in the intervals he used to gather and he was just looking for the deer. He was thinking about the deer. And then constantly those thoughts are registering in his mind. And Prabhupada says, if we misuse our position and think that we are fully engaged in devotional service and can do whatever we like, we have to suffer like Bharat Maharaj and be condemned to accept the type of the body that impairs our devotional service. So we have to be very, very mindful and conscious of what kind of devotional service are we executing. And Prabhupada in this purport also offers two solutions to curb this problem, how we can always constantly come back to a steady devotional service and help us to remember Krishna. First one he recommends is, the present life should be cultivated to be in mode of goodness. And the second is, we have to transcendentally absorb in Krishna's service. And best way is to chant Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. So Prabhupada is giving two solutions. One is to somehow or the other try to maintain our lifestyle in the mode of goodness, because that is the springboard to go higher. And second, engage in Krishna's service by chanting the Hare Kṛṣṇa Mahamantra. Now, a question came to my mind. Wasn't it Bharat Maharaj was not situated in mode of goodness in the forest? Wasn't he chanting the mantras? He was doing. Then what went wrong? What went wrong was the distraction was the subtle enemy there. And then there was not a conscious practice. So it can happen with us also. We may be coming for the morning program, we can be worshipping the deities, we can be doing every program as it is. But if we are not becoming conscious, then in the long run, we won't be able to think about Krishna. So now, but will it be spontaneous? Okay, today I read the purports and tomorrow I want to be thinking about Krishna. No. But for some, maybe yes. But for me, no. Because we go through the progress of life in different stages. There are four types of stages that one living entity goes through in the bhakti. That is, one is unconscious, incompetent. Someone comes to the bhakti, they start practicing the bhakti. They are incompetent in the devotional practice and they are also unconscious. That means they're not aware about everything. They still have deficit in their character, they have destructive habits. But as they perform devotional service, they raise themselves to conscious competent. That means one is becoming aware of their incompetency. That I have anarthas. I have to work on my anarthas. I have these problems. Someone is able to start acknowledging, someone is able to see that I have these problems. So then when you start to see, then you see the need to you feel that there is a need for me to improve. And as we continue in the devotional service, this conscious incompetent can turn into conscious competent. That means one is aware, they're conscious, and there is competency. They're becoming good, they're becoming attentive. That is the stages of nishtha, ruchi, asakti. They're going towards that direction where they're conscious, okay. And they're becoming competent because their anattas are removing and they're surrendering to the process itself. And they're becoming mature in their devotional service. And this conscious competent finally turns out into unconscious competent. That means everything becomes very spontaneous. How the devotees in Vrindavan, Goloka Vrindavan, they're spontaneously loving Krishna. No one tells them, you have to wake up for the Mangalarti, you have to put on the alarm clock to go to the Mangalarti, or you have to read the scriptures. There's no such thing. They have a natural, spontaneous loving. And they're liberated, they're mature in their devotional service. So, if we want to cross through these stages of unconscious to conscious, incompetency to competence, we have to start acknowledging that we have to practice consciously. And again, but bhakti is very, very sweet process because you just engage in devotional service and that will take you there. And this is what Prabhupada said, we have to create a lifestyle. Today I may be incompetent, today I may be unconscious about my incompetencies, or maybe I'm conscious of my incompetencies. But as we stick on to the devotional service, that will pull us through. But again, we have to practice consciously. Krishna says in the 635 Bhagavad Gita, Abhyasena kaunteya vairagya cha grihyati. That means practice by engaging your mind, and automatically that detachment will come to us. There's no extra endeavor that has to be put on to the detachment side. And what is the easy way? The easy way is by engaging in devotional service, especially by chanting Hare Kṛṣṇa Mahamantra. So one has to purify one's heart and mind. And that is only possible by chanting Hare Kṛṣṇa. Because our hearts and minds are contaminated with so many dirty things that we want to lord it over material world. Just like Krishna, we want to be Krishna's competitor. We want to show that, we are just like you, or we are more than you. And that competition, that enviousness is deep-rooted in us. But chanting the 16 syllables, the Mahamantra, it cleanses. That is the power of the holy name. And this is the process recommended by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Cheto Darpanam Ajanam, Mahadavagni Nirvapanam. So Prabhupada says, if you chant Hare Kṛṣṇa mantra, you will be revealed of the suffering caused by transmigration, perpetually from body to body. Chanting is such a simple thing. There is no question of caste, creed, nationality, color, social position. By the grace of God, everyone has tongue and ears. So everyone can chant, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. And as we were talking about how this verse is about, it should be leading us to thinking about Krishna. We are not going out there just to tell people that you have to believe there is life after death. There is transmigration of the soul. But you give them a Bhagavad Gita. You distribute a book. What happens to them? See, even reading this purport, they get a chance to chant the Hare Kṛṣṇa Mahamantra. So Prabhupada has very intelligently put the Hare Kṛṣṇa Mahamantra in the pages of the Bhagavad Gita. Just by chanting, they will get that sukruti. And then their hearts will be transformed. And then they can take up to the process of the devotional service. And also by giving Bhagavad Gita, we are not asking them to believe, but we are giving them an opportunity to actually go through the scientific study, how the knowledge has come to us and what is the effect of this knowledge. So sometimes it's very hard to change, because our lower natures haunt us. Again and again, we go back to the old habits, and somehow I feel that my dead and buried things, they come back, reappear. Then it can be very frustrating and disappointing. But Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita is solacing us. You practice, and you think about me. You arrange your lifestyle. And Prabhupada is saying you arrange your lifestyle in such a way. You chant Hare Kṛṣṇa Mahamantra. So in summary, we have seen how the destination of the living entity depends upon the thoughts that are accumulated at the time of death. And one should learn to practice remembering Krishna. Now, Arjuna might be thinking, I read from Surrender Unto Me by Burujam Prabhu. Prabhu was mentioning how Arjuna is thinking that, okay, thinking is easy about Krishna. And remembering about Krishna is easy, but not fighting. But we will see in tomorrow's discussion of the shloka where Krishna says, Arjuna, you think of me and you execute your duties. So even before we do any duty, if we can make that humble endeavor to remember Krishna, then we will be successful. Krishna is not asking Arjuna to go to some Himalayas or to some forest. But he's saying, whatever you're doing, you bring me into the perspective. You think about me. Whatever you're doing, you offer it to me. And so we also discussed how one's nature is saturated by what we are accumulated with. Tad-bhāva-bhāvitaḥ. One attains always without fail. What will they attain? Whatever is their current state of mind at the time of death. So, sorry, one more point I want to share. I think I did cover. Yeah, so because this is a Gita Marathon month, let's take an opportunity to think about Krishna while go out and distribute a book to others, and giving others an opportunity to think about Krishna, and also giving ourselves an opportunity to think about Krishna. Because I see in Vrindavan, it's not so easy to distribute a book. Because everyone says, I have Bhagavad Gita. And everyone says, I know Krishna. So how do you convince them? And sometimes to go to distribute one book, we really need to beg and pray, Krishna, please help me to let this book go away. Because everyone is a devotee here. But are they really devotees? Yes and no. They're devotees, but their engagement, they are attached to so many things. And today we are knowing that that kind of devotional service is not really good for them. They have to be Vyavasayatmika Buddhir. But for them to become Vyavasayatmika Buddhir, they have to get Srila Prabhupada's books. And when one gets in touch with Srila Prabhupada's books, their good fortune has started. So we'll pray to Srila Prabhupada and to the Vaishnavas and to the Guru Parampara that we become our humble instruments in giving out this message by thinking about Krishna and also helping others to think about Krishna. So, and also for us to arrange our life in the mode of goodness and chant always Hare Kṛṣṇa Mahamantra. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. if anyone has any questions or corrections or comments, I'm very happy to. Yes, Matas. Name of the chapter? 8.6. Yes, Prabhuji.
Sorry. Thank you for a nice class. You mentioned that if we do it unconsciously, the process unconsciously, then the progress will not be there, basically, which is correct. But, I mean, whether you do it consciously or unconsciously, if you're doing it, then that also progress is there in that as well, isn't it?
So true. Like, if the child knows the fire is hot, even if the child doesn't know the fire is going to be hot and it's going to be burning, if the child puts his hand, it will burn. This is for sure. But is this example applicable for all circumstances? No. Right? We can be in that stage, okay, we accept that unconsciously or consciously we perform bhakti, we get that sukruti and we will be moving. But how there is, even in Bharat Maharaj's life, there is a hamper, there is, breakdown. And Prabhupada writes in the purport, when one of the purports in that chapter, saying that Krishna personally put him into that test so that he becomes alert. So maybe we don't want to have that alert situations because Kali Yuga is already at the peak, right? We don't want to hang around in the Kali Yuga for a long time. So, and then Prabhupada is helping us. He's telling us to do these two things. So that should be our inspiration that, okay, maybe so far I'm doing unconsciously, but maybe I have to work on to become conscious. We are not denying that someone wouldn't get the credit. Someone will definitely get credit. But how long? When would they get the credit? This is a question mark. Right.
Conscious means being conscious of the don'ts.
Conscious of the don'ts.
Don'ts, yeah. What is not to be done?
Not necessarily. Conscious means when we are chanting, we are conscious about the name. We are conscious about, I can give my own personal example. When I'm chanting, my mind is everywhere. When I'm seeing the deities, I'm focused, but I'm not focused. When I'm reading, I get distracted with my phone. So I can name many like that. But I can catch myself and bring myself back. Every day, okay, today I was not very focused when taking darshan of the deities. Let me catch today. Maybe the whole week I'll be doing the same thing, but next week maybe I can change, right?
I've also found the reverse happening. When I'm trying to pay attention to the holy names and all that, then during the day there are periods when I'm totally spaced out. And even in ordinary decision making, I'm not, conscious or aware of that. So, like sometimes I'm confused, like, I have to be conscious, yes, I have to, attentive chanting, that's a must. It is an offense to be inattentive whilst chanting, we say every day. But, to me, I've got that challenge that when I do that, then during the day, there are hours when I am spaced out.
Me too. I'm also spaced out. But that's not the only reason for us not to try, right?
Yeah.
Because Krishna, ultimately, he sees the endeavor. If he is just focused on the results, I don't think I would ever go back there. So that's not a hopeful case for me. So Krishna sees the endeavor because he's Bhavagraha Janardhana. It's not by our endeavor that we will reach. But at least if we can put our sincere effort into it, then at the time of death, Krishna can manifest himself. Because even in the Shastra it is explained at the time of death, all the bile and the air and mucus, they get clogged up and the person is becoming unconscious all the time. How would you remember Krishna? It is He whom we are going to attract Him. If we try patiently now, at that time we can attract Him, with our sincerity we are attracting to Him.
Very true, yeah. Thank you. Our effort will attract His mercy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And help us. Thank you.
Hare Kṛṣṇa. But in Ajamil's story, Ajamil, we heard about his story. He's the most sinful person. But he didn't conscious about Krishna.
Right.
He just simply call his son's name, not remember his Narayan's name. So the name itself have potency.
Right.
Even though he don't have any consciousness. He simply, even he didn't fully remember, fully spell the, fully, he tell the Om Namo Narayana, not like this. Simply call his son's name Narayana.
Right.
Still the Vishnudutas came.
Yes.
So the Lord's name alone have the potency,
Yes.
even though we don't maintain the consciousness.
Yes. Can I add one point?
Yes.
Ajamil, although he was not aware about the glories of the holy name, and he was just intending to call only his son, Vishnudutas appear. This is Lord's mercy and the potency of the holy name, as you mentioned. But in the continuation of that pastime, if you see, as soon as Ajamil became aware that I was saved from the Yamadutas, he actually, and Vishnudutas gave him a chance. Then he went to Haridwar, he performed austerities, he engaged himself in devotional service consciously, and then the Vaikuntha plane came and he went back home, back to Godhead. Right? So what happened in the beginning of that pastime is we are getting to see how the holy name works on us. It can act up to that point that we can attract the mercy of the Lord. But still, the Lord is still wanting us to see that whether we are really willing to go back to Him or not. Isn't it? That's what my understanding is. So it's both ways. Unconsciously it's working, and consciously also we need to put effort. So I also pray and beg for your blessings so that, whatever I spoke may also manifest in my life, that I also become a little bit more conscious and be more attentive in my devotional service so that I don't take anything for granted. Thank you so much for attentively being here, present here, and encouraging me. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Hare Rāma, Rāma Rāma, Hare Hare. Hare Kṛṣṇa. Jai Srila Prabhupada.